What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Cosmic Wonder, where we talk about Marvel every single day, and we just got the trailer for the Fantastic Four First Steps. Right away, please go ahead and let me know what you thought about the teaser trailer in the comments down below. Did you like it? Did you not like it? What was your favorite part? We're going to break down the entire trailer, and yes, I know Galactus looks very small, but there is a very specific reason why he actually looks so small and he's able to physically go on Earth and be the size of about, let's say, 2 or 3 times the size of that Statue of Liberty. Trust me, there's a reason, and no, you shouldn't be that worried about Galactus. There's a lot to break down, so let's dive into it, but if you love Marvel, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our breakdowns or videos about the latest MCU news. Now, when the trailer released, Marvel Studios also sent out a press release, and the release was titled Release Number 0004, of course, as in the Fantastic Four. And they gave us a synopsis which really helps you understand the trailer a lot more. It reads, set against the vibrant backdrop of a 1960s inspired retro futuristic world, Marvel Studios' The Fantastic Four First Steps introduces Marvel's first family: Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, Sue Storm, the Invisible Woman, Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, and Ben Grimm, the Thing, as they face their most daunting challenge yet. Forced to balance their roles as heroes with the strength of their family bond, they must defend Earth from a ravenous space god called Galactus and his enigmatic herald, the Silver Surfer. And if Galactus's plan to devour the entire planet and everyone on it weren't bad enough, it suddenly gets very personal. Now, the trailer opens up with elevator doors opening up to the 31st floor of the Baxter Building, which in the comics is the Fantastic Four's living quarters. Now, the first thing you might notice about this is what we see out of the window. It's the New York City skyline, but it looks a lot different than what our current New York City looks like. That is because this is not only taking place in the past, but this is also taking place in an alternate universe from the main 616 Marvel timeline. So this universe is not the same universe where all of the events of the MCU have happened for the most part so far. As the synopsis mentioned, it's a retro-futuristic universe. But even though it is taking place in the past, in this alternate universe, we can tell that it is very advanced. If you take a look out the window, we can see a lot of different buildings fused with some of the New York City skyline that we know. For example, we can see the Chrysler Building on the left, and in other scenes, we can also see the Statue of Liberty. Based on what we know, this alternate universe has not gone through the Dark Ages. That's why, even though it's in the past, it is still more advanced. And you might notice as we go through their living quarters and we see some of the outside as well, it looks like there is quite a bit of inspiration taken from the Jetsons cartoon, especially with the way some of these buildings are shaped. Then enter 2 members of the Fantastic Four, Vanessa Kirby's Sue Storm and Pedro Pascal's Reed Richards, the Invisible Woman and Mr. Fantastic. They are inviting somebody into their home, which is in the Baxter Building. In fact, that's the first thing Sue says, welcome to the Baxter Building. And Reed says, we make a point to do family dinner every week. Sunday at 7 on the dot, no matter what, we're all here. And I have a feeling this particular line is going to come into play during the movie. Like one Sunday, they're not going to be able to make family dinner because they're going to be out fighting crime. And I wouldn't be surprised that after everything is said and done with the movie, the final scene is them meeting Sunday at 7 for family dinner. Like they'll go into space or fight a bunch of bad guys and miss family dinner several times because their life becomes so chaotic when they get superpowers and become famous that they just can't make it. But at the end of the movie, they finally come back together as a family and have that dinner. Then we get a great look at the Baxter Building, which has a big giant 4 on it, of course, for the Fantastic Four. And although this is taking place in a different universe and it's not your typical Fantastic Four building design that you would see in the comics, most iterations of the building do have a giant 4 on it. So they're keeping with that here. We go back into the building and we see Herbie. Herbie is the robot created by Mr. Fantastic and Master Zar of the Xandarians in the comics, and they created this robot so it could aid them in their search for Galactus, whom at the time they actually wanted to find him for aid in defeating the villain Sphinx. Now, there are a lot of stories with Herbie and a few different iterations of him that we see over time, but I think the main thing for this Fantastic Four movie is going to be that Herbie does sense Galactus, and he also helps the Fantastic Four with general duties around the Baxter Building. And in the the comics, Herbie even looks after the children of Sue Storm and Reed Richards. And Herbie is an acronym that stands for Humanoid Experimental Robot B-Type Integrated Electronics. I'm assuming the Fantastic Four make Herbie for general help around the Baxter building, but at some point in time they do kind of design Herbie to sense Galactus, since Galactus is going to be the main villain. Then we get a look at the Thing, who does look fairly comic accurate with kind of the eyebrow area. He's speaking to Kirby because Kirby is preparing dinner for the Fantastic Four family. Herbie is making a sauce, and Ben Grimm, the Thing, wants to test the sauce, and he says it's good, but he's going to add some garlic to give it more zing. And he says this in a way that's trying not to hurt Herbie's feelings, which implies that in this version of Herbie that we are getting in this movie, he is at least somewhat of a sentient being who has feelings. Otherwise, the Thing wouldn't really be trying to spare his feelings. Then we head up to what would probably appear to be the 33rd floor of the Baxter building, which is Reed's lab. Or it could be the 34th floor, which is considered to be kind of the heart of the actual headquarters, which has the computer banks, monitor banks, communications center. It could be either of them, but I'm thinking this is probably the 33rd floor. We see a giant chalkboard come out that appears to be very, very wide and very, very tall. It also seems to be double stacked, meaning there's one in front that can lower down to show the one in the back. This is just going to show us Reed Richards' genius. Remember, Reed Richards in Marvel Comics is the smartest man alive. And we see him working on a giant formula. Now, I've tried to look at this the best I can. I am obviously no scientist, so I can't really make out anything they're saying here. However, I did notice one detail slightly to the left of him on the chalkboard. We see kind of a tube curved going into two different ports, one of which says exit. Now, this very well could be for a rocket. This could be some type of exhaust thing. It could be something for fuel. It most likely has to do with the rocket. However, I do remember a report about a possible plot leak for the Fantastic Four that say, even though that the Fantastic Four are in this other universe, they originally come from the main 616 timeline. And all throughout the movie, Mr. Fantastic and the Fantastic Four are working on a way to get back. So this might be Reed trying to design a multiversal portal. Again, might be kind of a stretch, especially because I can't make out too much of what they're saying, but exit might imply going into something and then exiting on a different side. Probably nothing, but could be something. And then if you take a look at the very far left of the room, we can see different Fantastic Four astronaut suits than we actually see in a lot of parts in the trailer. And you have to really pay attention to notice the difference between suits. When we see the Fantastic Four going up for the first time and they're doing the press conference where everybody is recording them, they're wearing mostly white suits. They have a little bit of blue on them, but the majority of the suit, including the chest region, is mostly white, whereas these ones that we see in the corner here are mostly blue. So these are probably the suits that they're going to use on their second trip to space. Because Reed says, before we went up the first time, implying that they're going up again for a second time, but when they went up the first time, Sue couldn't turn invisible, and it shows us a scene where Reed is holding Sue and she is turning invisible. Now, I believe this is the first time they go up and they run into the cosmic rays, and the cosmic rays give them their powers, and in that moment, we see the effects of them. This was the first time they went up. The first time they went up, that's when they got their powers. So even though the president of Marvel Studios, Kevin Feige, said that this is not going to be a traditional origin story, we are still going to see the origin of the Fantastic Four and how they got their powers, going up into space, being exposed to the cosmic rays, which gives them each their powers, which they go over here, everybody but Mr. Fantastic. But they start off with the Invisible Woman. Reed says, before we went up the first time, you couldn't turn invisible, telling us, of course, that Sue Storm can turn invisible. To put it in simplistic terms, her powers deal with bending light waves, and they allow her to be invisible, and she can also make other objects invisible as well. She also has the ability to create force fields of psionic energy, and she can also levitate with this as well. And in another scene in this trailer, we can actually see Sue's powers in action, her bending light and using her psionic powers. And I must say, I think this looks fantastic. I love how this looks right here. I love how they portray her powers. But then Reed talks about Ben. He continues and says the first time that they went up, Ben wasn't a rock, and we see him here as the Thing in a pretty comic accurate look. In Fantastic Four #1, when we see him, he is wearing a trench coat and a hat. He's trying to conceal what he looks like until he sees the Fantastic Four flare in the air that Reed Richards sends out, and he ditches the trench coat and lets everybody see him as the Thing. Obviously, it's a little bit different here in the MCU because because people know who he is. The Fantastic Four are very famous, and he's looking at these TVs through the window of an interview that the Fantastic Four did about their second trip into space. So it looks like they're about to go up again. And on the TV, it shows Reed and Ben before he was the Thing. And Reed says, "This is the best pilot in the world right here," while he has his arm wrapped around Ben. Ben says, "Yeah, the best looking," he means. And this is a very important scene because this has to do with a lot of the struggle that Ben Grimm goes through once he's transformed into the Thing. It shows a picture of him alone on the TV, then it shuts off and he sees the reflection of how he looks now. So he's looking at his former self, how he used to look before they went up that first time, where he thought that he was a really good looking person, obviously from that interview, and now he is the Thing. And this is something that we'll see him struggle with throughout the movie. They're making a point to emphasize that here. But of course, the Thing's strength and his clobbering time is definitely going to come in handy when fighting the villains. Reed continues to talk about the group's powers, and he says, before they went up the last time, Johnny never caught fire. Then we see Johnny on the balcony of the Baxter building with the entire Fantastic Four team. Something clearly is happening that they see outside, and Johnny simply takes off. He flame-ons to go check it out while everybody else goes inside to get ready for whatever threat is coming. And I gotta say, I think he looks really good as the Human Torch. I think the effects look very good. So Johnny has pyrokinetic and thermokinetic powers. He can transform his body into a pure plasma state, engulf his whole body in flames. He can control heat energy, create fire without oxygen, and he can fly due to the buoyancy of the hot hydrogen cloud around his plasma. That is how he is able to fly. And of course, his superhero name is the Human Torch. And in the comics in Fantastic Four issue 1, each member of the Fantastic Four actually names themselves. They actually come up with their own names: the Invisible Woman, Mr. Fantastic, the Thing, and the Human Torch. Now, sadly, they don't show Reed. I'm very happy with how everybody looks for the most part. Again, I think the Thing, when he talks, needs a little bit of work. But besides that, I think everybody looks amazing. I did really want to see how Mr. Fantastic was going to look when he stretched. That, unfortunately, is kind of the one thing that we didn't get in this trailer, that and the Silver Surfer. They're saving that for the full trailer that gets revealed. But of course, we know that Mr. Fantastic has the ability to stretch and change the shape of his body. He can stretch, compress, inflate, and even flatten his body. And those who have been playing Marvel Rivals know how annoying and strong that can be. Now, Reed and Sue are in the same bed with each other because they are married in the Fantastic Four First Steps. They might show us how they met, they might give us a little bit of backstory about that. But in this, we know that they're together, and they will eventually, in the film, have their son, Franklin Richards, who is one of the most powerful characters in Marvel history. But from what we know about the Fantastic Four First Steps, he'll simply just be a baby in this, so not sure how much they'll dive into with him. He does play a very crucial role in restoring the multiverse at the end of Secret Wars in the comics, so we do assume that he is going to play a decent role in the multiverse saga overall. Now, while Reed and Sue are still in bed, they kind of give us the family dynamic here. Sue says Ben has always been a rock, implying that he's hard-headed, but it shows footage of Sue and Ben sitting next to each other. Ben is the Thing at this point in time, and Sue is looking at him like she really cares about him. Again, they are a family. They're all super close to each other, so that's what they're showing us here. Then she takes a jab at her brother, Johnny Storm, and she says Johnny is, well, Johnny. He's young, he's cocky, he's arrogant, and we love him for it. And she says, and I am right here. And it shows us her using her powers where she is bending the light. And again, I think this looks amazing. We also see Johnny flying into the air, leaving Earth's atmosphere. I'm assuming this is the first time that he gets his powers and really is pushing them to the limit. He wants to see his true power. He wants to see how far he can go. So he flies up as high as he can till eventually he leaves Earth's atmosphere and the flame goes out. And that's where we see him where it looks like he's in space and he starts to fall back to Earth. Then Sue says, whatever life throws at us, we'll face it together. And that's where we start to see the big threat come in. We see the Fantastic Four looking out from the Baxter building at the New York skyline. It looks like either a bunch of meteors or debris from something destroyed is heading toward New York City. And this calls the Fantastic Four superhero team into action. And again, remember that they are famous as a superhero team and as scientists, but they even show us a scene of a few kids wearing the Thing masks, and they have t-shirts on as well, and one kid even has a suit on that is supposed to be the Thing with a big 4 in the middle, showing us that the Fantastic Four are indeed very famous enough to where kids are wearing costumes of the characters. Now, I want to talk about Galactus because a lot of people were pretty upset that he was so small, but here's the thing. Galactus has the power to essentially shrink, and if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense that he would shrink down to a size that he could actually be on Earth. Because we know from the official synopsis that Galactus is searching for specifically the Fantastic Four. And if you are so big that your head is bigger than a planet, there's no way you could see, let alone go find, one specific person or a few different people on Earth. There's no way Galactus would be able to do that. So in order to find the Fantastic Four, he shrinks down to where he can go on Earth and actually look in the windows of the Baxter building, which is a scene that we saw in the footage that they showed us at San Diego Comic-Con. So if you think about it like that, it makes sense that Galactus is that small. He needs to be, so he can actually find the Fantastic Four. Now, why the Silver Surfer isn't doing this herself, we're unsure about. Julia Gardner is playing the Silver Surfer in the Fantastic Four First Steps, and we believe that she, by the end, will actually be good, so perhaps that's why Galactus is there himself, searching for the Fantastic Four. So to me, Galactus shrinks down to be able to go search for them, which means he probably is going to be as big as we hoped he would be, with his head being basically bigger than a planet itself. The devourer of worlds needs to be bigger than the worlds. He needs to be comic accurate, and Kevin Feige knows this. So I wouldn't sweat too much about the size of Galactus. To me, it makes perfect sense, and I hope that helps you out as well. Now, we do see a clip of John Malkovich, and people don't really know who he's playing. It's not official yet, but we believe that he is playing Red Ghost. Red Ghost is a Russian scientist that was also fascinated with cosmic rays. And once the Fantastic Four were exposed to the cosmic rays and got their powers, Ivan Kragoff, aka the Red Ghost, built his own spacecraft, loaded it up with primates, and intentionally went and exposed himself to the cosmic rays in space as well. Then him and his primate sidekicks, who were all mutated by the exposure to the cosmic rays, went on to fight the Fantastic Four. Now, we're pretty sure Galactus is the main villain of the movie, but we have heard that there are going to be a lot of other villains as well, such as Mole Man. We know he's going to be in the movie, and it looks like Red Ghost is going to be in there as well. Now, the last thing we hear and see of this trailer is Sue Storm saying as a family, because that is a major emphasis with the Fantastic Four. They are a family, they're Marvel's first family, and then we see a shot of them all together in their suits on a platform with a giant Four logo in the background. And this is actually a Beatles reference on the Ed Sullivan Show. They were on a stage with a bunch of arrows pointing towards them. And this is kind of a play on a nickname given to the Beatles, the Fab Four. So since this takes place in an alternate universe in the 60s, they're really taking advantage of that and making a play off of the Fantastic Four and the Fab Four of the Beatles, and even using the same stage that was on the Ed Sullivan Show. And that is the Fantastic Four trailer breakdown. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know what you thought about the trailer and our breakdown in the comments down below. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe so don't miss out on any other Fantastic Four or Marvel video. You can also find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.